Increasing shared revenue, making schools safer, and fighting violent crime.
3 initiatives on the top of Wisconsin's Attorney General's list of priorities in 2023.
NBC 15's Elizabeth Wada spoke one-on-one with Attorney General Josh Kaul today. Elizabeth, Kaul says he has a plan and funding already in motion to accomplish these things.
Let's start with reducing violent crime in the state. The Attorney General says he has a plan to dedicate $115 million to ramp up public safety. He says that, combined with adding universal background checks to gun laws and investing in the Department of Criminal Investigation, that will curb violence.
Right now, the level of violence that we've seen in communities around the country, really, in the wake of the pandemic is unacceptable. We need to invest in our communities.
Another topic I asked Kaul about, where does his abortion ban lawsuit stand right now? Well, the case is pending in Dane County Court. 3 DAs are named as defendants, one of which has filed a motion to dismiss the case. Kaul says right now he is in the process of responding to that motion.
What we're committed to is to fighting to restore access to safe and legal abortion in Wisconsin. Now, the easiest way that could happen is for the legislature simply to repeal the 1849 abortion ban that's still on the books. But short of that, we're going to continue litigating this case in court, and I suspect it will go through the appeals process, but that's going to take some time.
So if Kaul wins this abortion ban lawsuit, it would mean Wisconsin's 1849 law, which criminalizes abortion in most cases, would no longer be in effect. In the newsroom tonight, Elizabeth Wattis, NBC 15.